The state of New York is big, slightly bigger than the country of Nicaragua, with a population of 19.8 million, 8.55 million of that in New York City alone. Nicaragua's population is 6.08 million. With a gross domestic product nearly the same as Mexico, New York is vital to the economy of the United States. The first Europeans to walk New York soil were French and Dutch colonists. The French eventually migrated northward and settled in Quebec. When the British annexed the region from the Dutch, they named the new British colony New York, after the Duke of York. Bordered by Canada, 5 states, and the Atlantic Ocean, New York has more than 18.9 million acres of forestland and 7,600 freshwater lakes. Famous residents include basketball great and Space Jam star Michael Jordan, 2016 presidential candidates Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, actors Robert Downey Jr., Tom Cruise, Sylvester Stallone, actually, more actors than I can count, and musicians the Ramones, Tupac Shakur, the Beastie Boys, the Velvet Underground, and Kiss. Although New York is home to lots and lots of water monsters, let's start with wild men and a giant. Large, hairy, man-like creatures have been reported by settlers of New York since 1818. According to Voices of the Journal of New York Folklore, the first reported encounter with a wild man was outside the town of Ellisburg near the Canadian border. A gentleman of unquestionable veracity saw a hairy, stooped man running through the woods. The townsfolk turned out to hunt for the wild man, but he remained elusive. Other reports were sporadic. A young hunter told his father he had a run-in with a hairy boy in August 1838 near the border town of Silver Lake, Pennsylvania. Told to shoot anything that wasn't a person or domesticated animal, he was on alert when he heard someone coming toward him in the woods. Readying himself, he saw a 6 or 7-year-old boy covered in black hair. The boy stopped about 30 feet from him and stared at him. Terrified, the young hunter shot at the boy, but his hands were shaking so hard he missed the creature that turned and fled into the trees. In 1869, a group of nearly 100 people saw a wild man in Steuben County. The hairy monster screamed as it ran with a springing, jerking hitch in the gait, which gave him more the appearance of a wild animal than a human being, according to the Plattsburgh Sentinel. One witness told the Evening Gazette the wild man had long, matted hair, the thick, black, uncombed beard, the wild, glaring, bloodshot eyeballs, which seemed bursting from their sockets, the swage, haggard, unearthly countenance, the wild, beastly appearance of this thing, whether man or animal, has haunted me. A horseman saw a wild man in July 1895 near Margaretville, New York. A wild-eyed man or ape with long and hairy arms stood in the road ahead, according to Voices. The monster, at least 7 feet tall, screamed and grabbed one of the man's horses, dragging it into the darkness at the side of the road. A farmer shot at an ape-like creature, but the beast threw him to the ground and ran off. Hundreds of such sightings sprinkle the annals of the state's history. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the Kinderhook area has had enough sightings of this Bigfoot-like monster it's been called the Kinderhook creature. On October 16, 1869, well diggers near Cardiff, New York, uncovered a 10.4.5 petrified man. The stone man was then, of course, put on display for 25 cents a peek. The giant quickly became such a popular attraction for farmer William Newell, he hiked the price to 50 cents. However, there was something odd about the giant. Archaeologists and geologists called the giant a fraud, although the religious community supported the idea of a giant because of giants in the Bible. None of this mattered to people in the area, who still lined up to see the giant. Circus showman P.T. Barnum offered $50,000 for the giant, and when his offer was turned down, he had his own giant made. In an 1870 court case, New York tobacconist George Hull admitted creating the giant and planting it to be discovered by the good diggers. The giant, which has been featured in everything from a Mark Twain short story to a 2012 indie rock album, is displayed in the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York. In July 2012, photographer Denise Ginley and her boyfriend took a walk along the East River toward a farmer's market when they discovered a rotting monster. We were horrified by it and we took some camera phone pictures, and then finally we decided to come back with my camera and I got up the courage to climb over the fence and get closer to it, Ginley told the New York Daily News. Although the New York Parks Department claimed the creature was a discarded cooked pig, the long, straight tail and clawed feet make this impossible. The Parks Department was probably very quick to identify it as a pig and dispose of it, but it is most certainly not a pig, Ginley told the Daily News. The most obvious sign being a lack of a cloven hoof. Instead, this creature has 5 digits all close together. But what is it? Dr. Paul Curtis, a Cornell University professor, told the Daily News it could be a dog, but because of its lack of hair and decayed state, it was hard to tell. This sighting is the second such creature in New York. In 2008, a bloated, unidentifiable carcass washed ashore at Montauk, an area of the state steeped in UFO and time travel lore. Champlain is a 490 square mile, 400-foot deep freshwater lake that lies mostly in New York, but also touches Canada and Vermont. It is home to America's most famous lake monster, Champ. The local American Indians, the Abenaki, the Iroquois, had stories of the monster Tatascock, a horned serpent that lived under the lake. The first European to see the monster is disputed, although the popular story is that Samuel de Champlain saw something big in the water, but Champlain's sighting was of something less than 10 feet long. That's a snack for the next major sighting. In July 1819, Captain Crum of the ship Bulwaga Bay saw a black monster that stretched 187 feet long, according to the Plattsburgh Republican. The monster had a head like a seahorse, which stuck about 15 feet from the water. It had eyes the color of a peeled onion, 3 teeth, and a white star on its forehead. A railroad crew saw a gigantic serpent with silvery scales in the lake in 1873. A county sheriff saw a 30-foot-long water serpent in the lake that July, and in August, a steamship collided with a water monster and almost overturned. Sightings of Champ continue to this day. The most famous photograph of the beast was taken in 1977 and shows a creature resembling the Loch Ness Monster. Cayuga Lake, one of upstate New York's glacial Finger Lakes, has a surface area of 66.41 square miles, is 435 feet deep, and is home to 2 water monsters. Reports of the monsters date back to the early 1800s, but the first newspaper account didn't appear until 1897 in the Ithaca Journal, simply stating locals as being afraid to get too close to the water. In 1929, vacationers reported seeing 2 creatures about 15 feet long frolicking in the lake. Encounters began to get ugly in the 1970s when a toothy eel attacked swimmer Stephen Griffin, biting his arm and breaking it. Sightings of Old Greenie are sporadic at best but continue. Locals think the monster is most probably a sturgeon. Another of the Finger Lakes' 38-mile-long, 617 feet deep Seneca Lake is also the swimming ground of a monster. Local American Indian tribes claim the lake to be bottomless and inhabited by a temperamental creature. European settlers dismissed these stories as fanciful until 1899. According to a 1900 article in the Seneca Daily News, steamboat captain Carlton C. Herndeen and his pilot Frederick Rose saw an overturned boat about 25 feet long. However, as they closed in on the boat, it turned and swam away. Witnesses aboard the boat saw the monster raise its head and show 2 rows of sharp, white teeth. The boat struck the monster. The impact tossed passengers to the deck. Sightings continue, although none as exciting as Captain Herndeen's. Witness reports of a water monster that inhabits the Hudson River between Manhattan and Poughkeepsie vary wildly. Some witnesses say they saw a shark, others a manatee, and still others a sea serpent, according to a 1989 article in the New York Times. Most sightings of Poughkeepsie are only humps in the river, but people insist they see something large and unknown in the river.